Good evening. It's 6 o'clock, so I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is a work session meeting of the Manitou Springs City Council for January 10th, 2023. Notice on the published agenda, we do have the Pledge of Allegiance listed. I think that's a typo. We typically don't do the pledge during a work session, so we'll go right to roll call. So Councillor Wolf.
Here.
Councillor Johnson.
Here.
Councillor Shada. Mayor Pro Tem Fortune.
Present.
Councillor Chandler.
Present.
Councillor Weatherholt.
Present.
And the mayor is also here. So, okay, we got a full house. And also we don't do approval of the agenda, so we'll move right into discussion. We've got two items tonight to go over. The first being the hazard mitigation plan update. The second will be the Colorado Energy Office's performance contracting program. And I believe we're going to hear on both of those items from our planning director, Hannah. So Hannah, if you'd like to come up and get started.
Great, thank you. For the record, Hannah Van Den Moygan McGuire with the City Planning Department. For the hazard mitigation plan item, I'm going to turn it over to Kelsey Lanham, who's our planning technician, as well as Keith Buckmiller with the fire department.
Great, thank you.
Clarification, I'm not here representing the Manitou Springs Fire Department. I'm here as the Hazard Mitigation Program Manager.
Okay, thank you. And if you'd both introduce yourself and give us your titles, please.
Sure. Thank you. I'm Kelsey Lanham. I'm the planning technician for the Manitou Springs Planning Department. And I've been acting as the city project manager on this plan update.
And I'm Keith Buckmiller. I've been acting as the Hazard Mitigation Program Manager.
Okay, thank you.
So tonight we just wanted to formally introduce this hazard mitigation plan update and, talk about what we've accomplished so far since last year, what we've accomplished since the 2017 plan, what the next step forwards look like. And then our consultants we've been working alongside with since the beginning of this project, they prepared a presentation that will cover the basis of, why we're doing this update, why it's required, what goes into it, and what we've drafted so far.
Okay, thank you.
And so online, our two consultants are Jeff Brislon and Chris Johnson. And so they will be presenting a PowerPoint presentation on this update tonight. So I will pass it over to them.
Thank you, Kelsey. Can you hear me okay?
Well, you're not really. You're kind of fuzzy.
Hopefully you can. I'm going to share my.
We couldn't hear a portion of what you.
How about this? Does that sound any better?
Well, a little bit, but not much.
Okay, Chris, can you try your audio?
Sure. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah, that sounds better, Chris. It looks like you're.
Bear with me. I might be able to get a.
Jeff, maybe if you turn your camera off just for a little bit, that might help with your bandwidth. I know that helps sometimes.
Yeah, let me try that. Are you able to see the screen with the presentation?
Yes, we can see the PowerPoint slides.
Thank you.
Jeff, if you'll go through the slides.
Just want to give a short overview of the. Okay, are you able to hear me okay?
Yeah,
Okay, so just a quick overview of the hazard mitigation planning process. It's really being driven by the Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000, which is every local government in the United States is required to have these mitigation plans to remain eligible for certain pre and post disaster grants for mitigation from federal government. In mitigation is defined for this planning purpose as any to eliminate long-term risk to human life and property from hazards. So we're trying to break that cycle of response, recovery, and then getting hit by it again. The plan kind of lays out proactive strategies to reduce hazard impacts before the event happens. We followed a 4-phase process that was organized FEMA's original guidance of organizing resources, conducting an update to the assessment, and updated the mitigation strategy reflecting those risks. And now we're kind of in phase 4. We're moving forward with wrapping up the draft plan, and we'll be getting into adopting and implementing the plan. The plan update was done in coordination with a hazard mitigation planning committee. This includes the various city departments that are here on this slide. Also in coordination with a number of partners, stakeholder organizations that
excuse me, Jeff, you're
also
fairly
have a role in hazard mitigation in Manitou
Jeff,
Springs.
excuse me, Jeff,
So a
Jeff?
large number of
Jeff, hello,
good.
excuse me, Jeff, you're coming through kind of garbled. Is there anything you can do to improve your signal?
Yes,
It's garbled. It's hard to, we can't hear you distinctly.
Hey, Chris, is there any way that you could take over the presentation? I think your sound was coming through a little bit more clear than Jeff's.
Sure, I can do that from here. So sorry about the sound there. What Jeff was saying is that what we have been doing up to this point in conjunction with our work on the consulting team is working with a hazard mitigation planning committee as part of the FEMA planning process. So that includes staff from the city of Manitou Springs, all these various departments that have a stake in hazard mitigation and resilience projects. So planning has been leading this effort along with fire. We've also been working in conjunction with a lot of other city departments you see here, as well as public, private, and nonprofit stakeholders. So that includes neighboring jurisdictions and like, for example, City of Colorado Springs and El Paso County, where previously the City of Manitou Springs had their plan as a regional plan with El Paso County. So that has played a big role in this as well. Jeff, if you can hear me, if we can go to the next slide. So here we have an overview of the project schedule and where we're at right now in the process. The public review draft, we're in the process of pulling that all together right now. And the goal is to have a public meeting at the end of January to give the public just an opportunity to comment on the plan and make any suggestions or provide any input. We've already also included the public in the process through a public survey back over the summer of 2022. And this is another requirement for from FEMA to just engage the public in this process as well. Following the public review draft, there will be another opportunity to incorporate any edits into the plan and then send this along to the Colorado Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, who will review the plan one more time and then send it back to us for any final edits before we send it to FEMA for their final review. And then the goal for adoption right now is March of 2023. Next slide, please. So I'll talk really briefly about this, but one of the big portions of the plan is what we call the HIRA, which is the Hazard Identification and Risk Assessment. So that involves just looking over every natural hazard that Manitou Springs is exposed to and doing an in-depth analysis of the city's strengths and vulnerabilities to all of those hazards. So right here, you see the city's matrix for the ranking of the hazard severity by high frequency damaging events to low frequency damaging events and events that have significant impacts to life safety and multiple community elements versus those that have fewer impacts to the built environment. With this matrix, hazards such as flooding, mud and debris flow, and wildfire have generally been considered the highest priority for the city. And as such, those are the hazards that we are trying to target most with mitigation actions that we are coming up with in the plan. Next slide. And then this slide, as it loads, this is just a sample page out of the wildfire section of the risk assessment. So there's the wildfire is one of the larger hazard chapters. And in this, we did an analysis of the number of parcels and buildings that are within various wildfire exposure areas. And then using the city or the El Paso County assessor, data, coming up with estimates on the market value, content, and total value of exposed buildings within the city. A similar analysis is also done for flood risk using FEMA national flood hazard layer maps. So this is just to give you an idea of, like the kind of information that we're looking at in the risk assessment. And then here is also an excerpt from the public survey results. This specific question, we asked the citizens of Manitou Springs what kinds of mitigation actions they thought should be high priority efforts for the city to pursue. So these are broken out into various categories. The number one that we heard was wildfire fuels treatment projects, followed by forest health and watershed protection efforts. Evacuation route developments was a big thing as well. And then flood mitigation and water conservation. And these all track in general with, what our analysis is showing were the higher risk hazards for the city. And so they're good categories of actions to pursue. And then the next slide, please. So this leads us into the next kind of bulkiest part of the plan, which is the mitigation action strategy. So the table here shows a summary of all of the actions that the city of Manitou Springs included for their portion of the 2020 Pikes Peak Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan. They're broken out by the hazard that they were intended to address. So in that plan, the city had, pull this up again. The city had 42 actions that they identified. And prior to that, the city of Manitou Springs had its own hazard mitigation plan that was in conjunction with the comprehensive plan, Plan Manitou. So in that time since 2017, the city has completed 17 mitigation actions. And then two of those actions were combined into one because it was determined that they kind of served the same purpose. And two other actions were deleted. Typically, the deletion is just either the action was deemed, no longer a high priority, or there wasn't the budget for it, or it was already being accomplished through another action. So that's why those two have been deleted. So that is a really significant amount of progress based on our work and what we typically see. Getting 2 or 3 actions done within this 5-year update period is usually pretty impressive. So 17 is really impressive and shows that the city has been doing a lot of work towards reducing the risk and vulnerability. For 2023, 27 of those actions that were shown in the Pikes Peak plan are being carried forward, along with 4 new actions that the city is adding to pursue. All right, and then the last slide is just a Q&A slide. So any questions? I know I've thrown a lot of information at you.
Council questions? Judith?
Yeah, I'm going to turn my back to you to ask this question. My first question is about the, it's this, I believe, slide 8 of 12, the hazard identification overview. Is that a static document, or is that kind of a working document where you move hazards as you see their risk change? In other words, when I look at 2022, I look at severe wind as having wreaked a tremendous amount of not only havoc, damage, and the need for the city to respond. And I see that as it's in the fewer impacts to the built environment. But I think 2022, there were some significant impacts to the environment and to the city staff. So I was just wondering if you reevaluate this every once in a while and then you go, wow, 2023, if we see this again, are we going to move that into a different category?
That's an
Sorry.
Before 2012, we didn't even know about flooding. We had the general population thinking like we had floodplains, climb to safety, things like that. So that will be something that will be more impacted, and we evaluate as years go by each year. And this plan is not set in stone. This plan is set to be able to be adjusted and managed. And so we need to be able to, a lot of those times we had these plans, something else happened to interrupt it. And so we had to move our energies into different areas and different means of mechanisms to get the thing addressed. So this is not a see it this year, see it 5 years. This is a build it in 2017. Get work done that you can reevaluate it, the 5-year template, and start doing it again with reevaluations on a yearly basis or sooner. The nice thing about wind events is a lot of times we get the ability to have some warning that jet stream coming down. We get the notification sometimes 2 or 3 days beforehand. So the life loss can kind of be more managed, whereas the damage is going to happen. The engineering, which we can thank Hannah's group for, the process that they go into, like putting solar panels on places and things that can become kites, they address it in the plan so that we know we have to plan for 105-mile-an-hour winds. So, we have a very diligent planning division that looks at the stuff that's going to be affected by the winds, topography, eaves, structures that can be uprooted. And thus we have an automatic mitigation plan sitting in our office with Hannah and with Kelsey. But that doesn't mean that this plan is going to be like this forever. And one of the things we try to do this year is separate the plan from the hazard mitigation so that we can have changes in our plan and not devalidate our mitigation plan for hazards. And we just point at each other as we go. So that was been part of the process as well, is to separate the plan, the Manitou Springs plan, from the hazard mitigation. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you so much. And my last thing is a request, not a question. On slide 9 of 12, you have the wildfire parcel risk analysis, which I think has a lot of information on it. I just can't read it. So I'm wondering if that map can be emailed to council so we can see it and read it. I think that would be important. I can't read it at all.
Yes, I can definitely send a link to.
That'd be great.
everyone.
Thank
We
you.
also have a large map, thankfully for Emily in our public services that has created a lot of that overlay. And we have a map that's perhaps about the size of this, that's more easily read. But the fire department went and looked at every address in Manitou Springs and did an assessment on how bad that house structure was. And part of that assessment was looking at the topography, the fuels around. Because every person's home is their ability to do what they want. They can grow pitcher bushes and right up against their houses, and we can't stop that. But we can say this is a risk and let them know that it's a risk and then let them take the responsibility for it. Unfortunately, if they don't take responsibility for it, it has an impact on their neighbor. And that's, I think, where Manitou Springs has to come together and say, this is what we will allow, this is what we won't allow. And again, I point back to Hannah in her building codes and her assessments on structures and what she allows.
Thank you. I really appreciate just gathering that information. Thank you. That's all I have.
Other councilors, questions? Comments? Okay, a question on slide 6, you have a list of well, the various entities that are involved in this. You noticed UCCS is listed as basically a stakeholder. I was wondering what UCCS's role in this is.
Thank you for that question, Mayor. So UCCS's involvement is just one of our hazard mitigation plan members or committee members is a professor there. Professor Eric Billmeyer, he's the director of geology there. And so he was one of the stakeholders that just reviewed the draft. If he had any input he could give to us, he would. But other than that, the tool itself did not.
Okay, that's great. We have the geologist on. Okay. I guess let me see slide one with the histogram.
Go to slide 8.
Showing slide 10. Yeah, so you've identified the top 5 things that you responded to. I guess I'd like to know if how that corresponds to our existing efforts. Kelsey, Keith, I don't know if
Hey, Chris, will you mute your mic while I think we're getting some feedback? Is that better? I think that's better.
okay, yeah. Okay, sorry to repeat the question. So on slide 10 and 12, it's the public survey results. We've got, and you in particular, you identify the top 5 items. I think a couple of those correspond to what things we have in plans in works. Yeah, I know one of our ideas, we wanted to cut back some timber up in the watershed at the reservoir. So I'm just jog my memory. Where are we at with that? Does anybody?
That
have an
has
update?
started. Lieutenant Mike Willie is the wildland lieutenant in charge of that program. They've had at least one work day already where they've started to mitigate some of that wood. But then we have 2 problems. The first is to drop the tree and make more space, but then we have ground cover that's going to be ignitable. So it's a complicated process to drop the trees and then get the trees into positions where they won't ladder the fuels. But that has started. We have a couple work days. We've got a wildland academy going on right now at Colorado College, which is for the whole state. And some of those people be looking for places to get their saw skills done. And so we can utilize or trying to utilize those folks as well as our sawyers in Manitou Springs to be able to get some time on this on the chainsaw to be able to do that mitigation work. The reason why we wanted to work on the mitigation for the reservoir is if we do have an issue up there and we have a lot of those standing fuels, if that fuel catches on fire, it'll turn to ash. And they lost a reservoir in Denver because they had a wildfire. This is probably about 18 years ago. So we have to be conscious of where the fuels are and where the biggest impact is. Of course, we look out our window and we see all the trees in our neighbors. We see the trees overhanging roofs of houses. But if that tree catches on fire and takes a house, that's a bad thing, but not as bad as losing our reservoir by filling it up with silt. So that's where the energy has been first going is the reservoir. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you. That was helpful.
And Mayor, just a reminder that we do have a 3-year contract that we'll be working on that reservoir. And we're putting 25,000 every year towards that. There were pictures in this week's weekly update that showed the work that had been done to date. So that's something to look at also.
Great. Thank you. Anything else from council? Okay, well, I guess, thank you very much. We appreciate the update. Carry on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, Jeff, Chris, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Okay.
may I make another statement just
Sure.
for the public? So if they are listening, on our website, we have a whole thing about site assessment where you can go in and look at every single property, and you can also have them come out and look at your property again and why it rates that and what you can do to enhance or to decrease your chances for a fire near your home. So I would encourage the public to go look at that. We have it under site assessment, and we'll also send the link to the map to everybody, but it's there on our website.
Good point. Thank you, Denise. Okay, the next item is Colorado Energy Office's Performance Contracting Program. Hannah?
Great. Thank you, Mayor Graham. For the record, Hannah Van Nimwegen McGuire with Planning Department again. Again, I'm going to pass the buck of the presentation over to our guest presenters. So we have Katie and Delynn who have a presentation prepared for us about what this program is and what it could do for us potentially. And we'll go from there. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Okay, ladies, when you take the microphone, if you'd give us your name and titles, please.
Good evening, council members. I'm Delynn Southern. I'm a technical specialist at the Colorado Energy Office supporting the.
You need to be about 3 inches from the microphone.
How are we doing? Oh, okay.
That's better, yeah. That's pretty good.
All right. Good evening, council members. I'm Delynn Southern. I'm a technical specialist with the Colorado Energy Office supporting the Energy Performance Contracting Program.
And I am Kate Sipla with Schneider Electric. I am the government program manager for the state of Colorado for my team. We are a private firm who engages in public-private partnerships with the Colorado Energy Office.
All right. So for our presentation tonight, I'm going to get things started. I'm going to provide a bit of the bones about the program and then pass it over to Kate, who is going to provide more of the meat. Good. All right. So energy performance contracting, essentially kind of a broad term or definition is it's a financing and contracting tool that allows public jurisdictions the ability to use operational energy savings from facility improvements to actually repay for the project over time. It is one of our longest standing programs here at the Energy Office. We've been operating it for about 25 years. Since then, our public buildings have achieved almost 300 million in first year energy savings. That equates to about $846 million being invested into our Colorado facilities. And from that, communities have realized around 52 million in first year cost savings. The program is defined by statute and it establishes 4 main guidelines. So to be a participant in this program, all projects have to be cash flow positive. We want to make sure that we're not putting debt onto future budgets. We also do require that the projects look at the cost weighted average of the equipment. And we make sure that our financing terms are less than 25 years. All projects do have what we call a guarantee. So any of the savings that are identified from these projects are guaranteed by the firm that's implementing them. And then lastly, to help support that guarantee, we do require 3 years of what we call measurement and verification. This is the phase at which our firms provide an annual report that shows the performance of the project. In Colorado, we operate this program as a public-private partnership. So you'll see here on this slide, our office kind of serves as that program administrator. We provide the framework for the program. We offer staffed engineering support. We have standardized contracts that have been approved by the state attorney general. We also have a number of guidance tools. And then next part of that sphere is our public jurisdictions. That's you guys. And then lastly, our private sector firms, and Kate is representing one of our pre-qualified, what we call ESCOs or energy service companies. So she works with Schneider. They're in our program. Next slide. So this chart right here, it kind of shows the model of the energy performance contracting program. You can look at that first column as your current, operating cost or expense. Using this program, a firm like Schneider works with your team. They come in, they identify any energy, water, operational, maintenance savings. And then using those savings, they're actually able to develop a project. And those savings are used as the payment over the project term. After you've paid for the project using those savings, you guys get the benefit of brand new equipment, better operational efficiencies, and then you get to keep those savings from that point forward. A great thing to note about this program is these savings are eligible for project grant match dollars. So we work very closely with the Department of Local Affairs, and they allow you to use this as part of your match dollar, which is great. Next slide. The EPC process, it's long, but pretty simple. So there are 5 main steps that are listed here. Step 1 is really kind of the phase that we're at right now. It's that introductory step. Step 2 is where you select the firm that actually will go work with you, identify any of those savings opportunities at your facilities. Or sorry, step 3, that's step 3. Step 4 is the implementation of the project, the construction phase. And then step 5 is that measurement and verification phase I referenced earlier. Next slide. So this is, for the visual people, this kind of shows it a little bit more in depth. So you'll see
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
On the previous slide, you can bow out at any step here if you determine, yeah, so there's not a commitment through step 5. It's just we can find out where we are. Okay, thank you.
So again, this visualizes the process a bit differently. So again, step 1, like I said, is the client commitment. We do ask that if you are interested in pursuing this program, that you sign an MOU with our office. It's non-binding, but it does allow us to allocate our staff time and funding to supporting you throughout however far you guys choose to go through within this process. Once you get to that ESCO selection phase, our office does support 2 pathways. So we understand that many procurement policies require that you do a solicitation or an RFP. So we have guidance tools for that. We have a standardized RFP template that we can provide. Additionally, we also do support a sole source approach as well. So if your procurement allows and you've already been working with the firm, sometimes it is easier just to go ahead and work with that firm and kind of bypass that formal RFP process. We support that as long as your procurement team signs off on it. So once you have selected the firm you're going to work with, you sign what we call an investment grade audit. that provides you with that in-depth analysis of your facilities. And then you enter into that investment grade audit phase. So within that phase, there are 3 big meetings that the energy office does support you guys through. We'll have our engineers on those calls at those meetings. They're 30, 60, 90% progress meetings. So at that first 30% meeting, it's kind of understanding, what this project could look like. The 60% meeting allows you to see, hey, we've gotten pretty far in identifying what buildings we want to focus on, what measures we like to include. And then the 90% is really getting the pricing for measures, finalizing those savings and guarantee amounts, and then identifying any funding solutions. So once you guys receive that investment grade audit report, it also includes what we call a project proposal. And then you'll enter in, if that looks good with you guys, then you'll enter into that implementation or construction phase. Again, our office is there to attend those progress meetings with you guys, make sure the project is operating as it was designed to. At the end of that phase, there's what we call a post-installation report. Our engineers will work with your team. They'll work with the ESCO. We'll make sure that all the project's been built as specified, the savings are there. And then you enter into that annual 3-year M&V period. And so we'll receive a report. We'll review it with you guys for 3 years. And then after that, the project is complete, but you'll still be achieving those savings.
And I'm sorry, I keep asking questions. That's okay. But I would assume that the timeline for these would just be dependent upon how many projects we want assessed and the scope of those projects,
Yeah, absolutely. So
as well as the costs.
yeah.
To hire to do the investment grade audit to begin with.
Yep. And I would say typically that investment grade audit phase is, anywhere from 3 months to 9 months, again, dependent on those things. And then construction can take about a year, but again, different for everyone, but that's typical.
And just to touch on the investment grade audit fee before we get to that next slide. So again, I'm Kate Sipla with Schneider Electric. We are one of the pre-qualified energy service companies that has been vetted by the Energy Office. So we're both happy to field questions from both sides of the table here. So the investment grade audit, there is a fee. That's the keyword investment there that you picked up on. But the intent here is not to make the audit fee so grossly exorbitant that it prohibits you from wanting to move forward. So there's a standard pricing rubric that the Colorado Energy Office uses. It's dependent on mileage away from the Energy Office itself in downtown Denver, as well as the amount of square footage that you have. Yours is about 25 cents a square foot. Kevin French sent me a list of buildings. So we are sort of in a client commitment MOU stage where I'm actually putting together a business case for the city of Manitou Springs just to see if this is even a viable option for you. Just based on my conversations with Denise and her team, we do think that there are some opportunities. So that investment grade audit fee based on the square footage that Kevin thinks he'd like audited in his first business case, it's about maybe 50,000 square feet. So you're looking about $12,000. So let me just say, my firm is not in the business of doing investment grade audits. We don't make money off of them, and oftentimes we lose money on them. It's a means to an end. It's a means to enter that agreement so that we can commit our engineering staff to figuring out where are the savings, where are the opportunities, where are the shortfalls that you're experiencing right now. We know that your buildings have a lot of need. I think that's been stressed in a number of different ways. So this is not just a fancy audit that's going to collect dust and sit on a shelf somewhere. This is an implementation plan as well as a funding mechanism all in one turnkey solution. So I know that there were a couple of studies done in the last couple of years. And I've taken a look at those. They are definitely valuable. I've shared them with my team. It's definitely, cut out a lot of time and given us some narrowed focus on how we might approach this, but, you know, I understand that there might be some trepidation about entering another study or feasibility assessment of sorts. And this isn't designed to charge you a bunch of money for an audit. This is designed to actually get those things done that were identified in the study. And as far as we know, there's about $6 million worth of capital backlog for your facilities, from what I understand. So this is not just to, or, you know, $11 million for water and, you know, all these things. And so it can be really daunting to take all that in and figure out how to manage it yourselves. So this really is a way to engage with, you know, a firm that can get things done, such as Schneider or another ESCO that you might choose, having oversight from the energy office to make sure that there's transparency, you're getting the best value for the solution that you choose. And, you know, it can make a pretty big dent in that capital backlog. I don't know that it's going to take care of everything, but I'm pretty confident that we could take care of probably about half of it. In addition to that, there's a lot of stimulus and federal funding right now, as you know. So this is a really great time to consider that, because those grant dollars and federal stimulus dollars can be added to this to buy down the cost of the project. So
And could you guys also actually give us advice on what those stimulus possibilities are?
yes, in fact, I have a slide about that later.
Okay,
So
thank you.
we can go ahead and move forward. Yes, go ahead.
So this is just really basic, but I kind of missed the premise of this. So is this the Manitou Springs? Is this city money that we're using to spend to do the upgrades that you recommend and then we get reimbursed? Or is this some type of semi-loan program where I don't understand where the funding part.
That's a great question. So do you want to take that, Dylan?
So when the firm, for instance, Schneider, if they go and visit your site, what they'll do is they'll look at how you're currently operating your buildings. They'll be able to recommend better ways to operate your buildings. There's a savings component associated with that, and that savings amount is the funding for the project. And so
Wait, the part I don't understand is though, if the savings amount is the funding for the project, so I want to do a project where I'm installing solar on the roof, for example, to reduce the electricity. It's a chicken and the egg thing, but how am I'm gonna buy the solar panels with money that I'm gonna save after the solar panels are installed? That's where the disconnect is for me.
okay, so often communities like yours, they use a tax exempt lease purchase as a common way for them to fund these projects. So it's kind of a way, the savings are used as a financing payment. So this is kind of a financing payment or financing tool if it needs to be. So the savings are used as how much you're paying every year over the term of the project. So if you have, it can be it's usually about 15 years. And so Schneider will divide those savings, make sure you have a project that's cash flow positive and will pay back in 15 years.
Can you give me an example of how a savings would be cash flow positive? So you're saying that basically you're advising us on how much money we may need to accomplish certain tasks that will allow us to save money in the future. We have to find the funding to do that task ourselves.
We
And
actually
then-
help you do that.
Yeah.
We find and locate the financing for you.
Okay, so you help guide us and then we enter into some kind of financing agreement and then we have some kind of loan that we have to pay back over 25 years. And so every year if we save X amount of dollars, can you take it from there? Because I don't see
Sure.
how this, I don't
So that would
understand
be
the
used as
savings
the
part.
payment. So
Hmm?
that would be the payment, the X amount of dollars you're saving, that's the repayment of the loan.
Oh, so if I borrow $500,000 and all I have to do is pay the $200 a month that I'm saving on the utility bill? And that's
Sure.
supposed to,
Well,
that's supposed to satisfy the terms of the loan?
and I,
That little,
Do you mind
just
if
the
I
little
look?
savings?
no, so what they'll do is they'll do the analysis to see how much they project that we will save. And then we'll be able to take a loan or hopefully get a DOLA grant because that's part of this or other ways to help fund it. So it really doesn't impact the amount that we allocate each year. I mean, it becomes net neutral. The other thing is, and if you want to talk a little bit about the expectation, and if we don't hit those savings, how you're held accountable. So it's
Yes.
not just, okay, you're going to get 1,500 and then maybe we only get 1,200 savings. So if you want to talk a little bit about that, I think that would be helpful.
Yes, absolutely. So the big thing behind this is the guarantees that come with it that Dylan mentioned. So when you're doing a typical construction project, either the city staff acts as the general contractor and has to manage a whole bunch of subs. They're doing a bunch of procurement exercises. They're managing a lot of different things. A company like Schneider Electric would act as the GC on your behalf. So it's taking time and resources that staff don't really have, and we take that on. We come out, we identify what the projected savings are. I mean, we have energy engineers figuring out, okay, if we switch out that light bulb over there, how much is that going to save you for the next 25 years?
So in other words, after you're done with your analysis, the amount that we save per month is the only amount that we would owe on a project to fund it, on the funding.
Absolutely. Yes. And if for some
What's the
reason,
guarantee part?
so I'm getting to that. So the guarantee is, that 3 years of measurement and verification that Dylan mentioned are part of the state statute. That's required of every client who moves through this program, of every energy service company who administers it. So at least for 3 years. And with my firm, you do have an option to continue that measurement and verification. We actually give you a report that says, okay, we guaranteed you were going to save whatever, $100,000 a year. If you only hit 90,000, my firm has to write you a check for 10 grand. That's where the guarantee comes into play.
And the guarantee is for 3 out of the 25 years, and then the rest you're on your own? Unless
Not
you pay extra
necessarily.
for like a warranty thing?
So you can pay a nominal fee for continuing measurement and verification if you wish, but I can tell you, we typically see savings about 15% more than we predicted. So our clients are not just seeing a net neutral cash flow, they're actually seeing positive cash flow out of this for years to come. And I'm going to go over some examples so that hopefully it'll be a little easier to wrap your head around it, seeing another city who used this in real life and how that plays out. So if you want to flip through this slide, we can just skip this one. This is just me talking about myself and nobody needs to hear that. So, so as far as, that support that you get after the fact, again, this is different than a traditional construction project. You've spent some money on a study, where the deficiencies lie, but you haven't been given an implementation plan or a way to pay for it. Performance contracting takes care of all of that, the construction, as well as making you whole afterwards to make sure that those savings are going to be there. And then beyond that, we also have other services that we provide for the length of the term, whether it's 15, 20, 25 years, to ensure that you're not just maintaining the savings that we predicted, but we might even have ways that we can help you tweak it even further into the future. As your equipment and your buildings age, the needs of that facility change. So we can help you change with it and make sure that you still get those savings many, many years into the future. So this is not just, do construction, hand you the keys and tell you good luck. We're really going to hold your hand through the whole thing and be able to bundle a lot of different projects together, get a lot of things done all at once, rather than saying, well, maybe we could afford to do the police station this year and we can do the library in 2 years, and everything's very piecemeal. We can get a lot done all at the same time and give you a funding mechanism to pay for it. Next slide.
Judith.
I have a question about, you mentioned matching funds. Explain to us how projected savings could be used as the match component of a grant.
So those savings, DOLA, in the eyes of DOLA, they count that as real funding because those dollars are like used to attract financing, and so in that sense, it is money. It's money that the city now has they didn't have before. So by making these upgrades, previously your operating budget was, up here. Implementing these improvements will bring it down here. And so now you have this amount of money that is no longer being used to run inefficient buildings. And so those are real dollars. Those real dollars are used as part of that grant match.
I see you shaking your head, Councilmember Wolf.
It sort of gets back to what you were saying before. That was, if I need matching funds, I would assume I need the matching funds at the time that, we're getting started here so I can hire the contractor and have the work done. But you're saying, oh yeah, the way you're going to pay for the matching funds is that money you don't have yet, money that you haven't saved yet, but money that you will eventually save after you hire us to do all the work. So how are you going to have your matching funds? How are you going to come up with matching funds when they don't exist yet? I don't know. Am I the only one who's confused by this?
No,
No.
Let's give them a chance to
Yeah.
to respond to that. I think, yes, I do. I think I do. And I think they can respond to that.
Absolutely. And I understand, we're talking about very nebulous things that are not on paper right now. So it can be hard to conceptualize. That investment grade audit is where that engineering comes into play. That's where the engineers from my team are calculating how much that light bulb's going to save over the next 20 years. We put our stamp behind that.
If I have to have the matching funds before I hire the contractor, and I'm going to get the matching funds from the light bulb savings next year, I need the matching funds now to pay the contractor. How am I going to get these matching funds from money I haven't saved yet? Is it because the contractor says, oh, you don't really have to pay us the matching funds, we're just going to pretend, but the matching funds get paid to us over a 25-year term, they don't get paid up front? Is that the answer? Or, I mean, I don't want to give you like multiple choice answers, but I don't understand. Usually in our experience, or at least in my experience, matching funds is money that you have now that you're ready to pay for the match. And you're saying, oh yeah, you'll pay for the match with the money you'll save next month. What? You need to pay for the match now. So I mean, it's not that complicated.
Yeah, no, I understand your question. I think maybe a better way to describe it is the identified savings maybe reduce your matching funds. So instead, like you have the 50% match that Department of Local Affairs requires for their Energy Impact Fund grant. They will allow us to reduce that match grant requirement down by those savings. Does that explain it a bit differently? It's kind of.
So the matching funds get waived to the extent that you'll be saving money over the next 25 years.
Yeah.
So your matching funds might be 10 cents because you're going to be saving all that money.
It won't be 10 cents. I believe
So
that
you
can
still have
do
to come up with the matching
50%.
funds. I
Yeah.
think what you're saying is that the matching funds do not get paid by future savings. The matching funds get paid by the money in our general reserves or whatever. And then the DOLA might say, oh, we're going to reduce the amount of matching funds we're charging you because we think you're going to save $500 a month on the electric bill. So instead of your matching funds being 20,000, they're going to be 10,000 or whatever.
Yeah.
Is that what you're trying to tell us?
Yeah, and I think that's a good conversation. I think a more appropriate way to think of it is it reduces the match that you guys have to come out of pocket for. Okay, good. Okay.
Did we
good.
get there?
Could I
Okay.
ask a lead-on question to that, though? Because what I'm hearing you say is that the loan, if you will, is paid by our savings, but we're also paying for whatever match. Let's say it's 10,000. We're also paying for that. So we're making a payment on the loan per se, and we're also paying off whatever match with the proposed, the potential savings. Is that what I'm hearing you say? There's two bills to pay. Reimbursement. So
DOLA is going to count these savings. So these savings do go to that debt service payment, right? They're also going to count that same pool as reducing that match requirement. Yeah, so if there is when you're looking at the match, if there's still an obligation for the city to contribute to get those DOLA grants, you guys might have to do that. Again, that's part of the process that Kate's team will work with you guys through to really figure out, like, how does this money fit into this bucket? Where's this money going? That is part of their process. And certainly your DOLA rep, they support, the DOLA program does support our program, and we are so happy to kind of work through this whole, I guess, money trajectory with your team, just to make sure everyone's, clear about kind of how that money moves around.
Can I try to recap that and you can tell me if I'm right?
Okay.
Just because after what Judith said, I thought maybe I misunderstood you. So whatever the matching fund is, whatever the matching money is, we have to cough that up front from the general reserves, and then you're done. The only thing about the matching funds is they'll say, oh, normally your matching funds would be 2 million, but we're going to only charge you 1.7 million because we see how much money you're going to save on your electric bill over the next 50 years. But whatever, it's almost like you get a mortgage, you might have to pay more points or fewer points, but you still have to pay for it. So I think you just pay the matching funds up front. They might give you a little discount based on whatever. And then after that, you have this loan that the monthly payment is never allowed to be, for the first 3 years, more than how much you saved. Did I say that right? Is that?
More or less, yeah.
I do want to
Can you
make a
yeah.
clarification. You don't have to have the matching funds out of your reserves. So it doesn't have to say you have to have $2 million of reserves out of a $5 million project. Part of those matching funds can be part of the loan if you chose to do something like that. So it's not like you have to have that cash right then available. So
But
it
if it's
gives more
part of the
flexibility.
loan, that would be in excess? If it's part of the loan, then is the loan still limited under your contract for the first 3 years to just the amount of the savings, or do they tack that on?
That's definitely taken into consideration. We do all of the financing up front, and everything is bundled over the course of the 25 years. So it's not front loaded. It's not, you're not going to be, in the hole on the back end. It's meant to be a sustainable long-term financing.
With a net
program.
zero impact on the city budget. I see. So you could only do what Denise is suggesting if you have that much savings, right?
Right. And what we're trying to do in this initial business case, which, we're working on right now, Emily in the clerk's office did a great job getting me some utility data over the holidays. We're going to come out and do site visits. Again, this is on my team's dime, just to make sure this is even viable. I think based on what we've talked about with Denise and her team, and just based on what I've seen from your previous facility studies and just walking around town myself, I think there's a really good opportunity to take advantage of this program. And, if you decide, as a council, the only way that you want to move forward with this is if you have, a certain percentage of savings above and beyond that cash neutral point, then we'll figure out a way to make it right so that you have that little bit of wiggle room to feel a little bit safer. So if that's what it'll take to get this over the finish line, we can definitely take that into consideration. Does that feel a little bit better?
It never felt bad. I was just trying to understand what you were trying to teach us. So it's not a feeling thing. I just, what you were saying before wasn't making sense. And now it makes sense to me. So I appreciate it.
Okay, good.
I think
appreciate
if you
that.
can go through and give some examples, that may
Yes.
be helpful.
Yes. So if we go to the next slide, you can go ahead and click through. I had some animations, but we can go ahead and look at this from a full perspective here. So when we talk about savings, the word savings has a lot of different meanings. Obviously, utility savings are a big portion of what helps fund these projects. And we're looking at things like, heating and air conditioning systems. We can look at water conservation, whether that's plumbing, whether that's landscape irrigation for your parks, anything that would save on utilities. We can capture those savings and use it to fund the project. The next thing that we look at, and my team is particularly aggressive with, is maintenance and operational savings. So some ideas for this could be things like rekeying buildings. We could even put in electronic key card systems in your buildings as a part of this project. Because the cost of rekeying a building every time somebody loses a key, that's a maintenance and operational savings that the energy office approves. And they review all of the cash flows that I send them. And they do kick it back sometimes and say, no, we don't know if that's a real savings or not. Let's leave that out. So they are here to protect you. Another maintenance and operational savings idea we've seen, the carport structures that have the solar panels on top have been really popular. Not only do they contribute to reducing your electric bills, they could actually reduce insurance premiums if they're over your public works trucks or your police cruisers, because they're less prone to hail damage when they're under a covered structure. So this is how deep we get when we talk about savings. Revenue generation is a really interesting one that I'll touch on quickly. Anytime we can create a new stream of revenue through one of these projects, that can be counted towards repaying for the project itself. So some common examples of this could be EV charging. There are a lot of companies like ChargePoint who are very eager to put their chargers in your towns, but they're the ones that are getting all the revenue from it. So let's turn it around and say, well, if we have a municipal owned EV charger, now we're collecting all of those fees. That's a new stream of revenue that we didn't have before. And that's sustainable over time. Obviously, tourism is, a big draw for bringing people to Manitou Springs. And so anything we can do to enhance your facilities to make people want to come here, spend money, spend their weekends, spend their sales tax dollars. The example I'm going to use here in a minute shows just how far we took, launching their tourism efforts to raising more revenue for the city. And then, of course, grants. Everybody is in a tizzy about grants. There's so many of them. It's a lot to take in. How do we keep track of it all? Do we even have the staff to apply for these? So my team specifically, I can't speak to the other energy service companies, but we have a grants consultant in-house on our team, and we dedicate that person to not only identifying, but helping write the grants that we think you can qualify for. And we don't limit this to infrastructure and energy grants. Again, I'm just speaking for myself and my team, but if there's, maybe a historic building grant or a mental health grant you think you want to go after, if we're working together, we'll help you with those. We know that we're not going to get awarded every single grant we apply for, but might as well try. There's a lot of money out there for infrastructure, sustainability, energy efficiency. If you don't take it, somebody else will. And just to let you know what our track record is like, in the month of October, just recently, we received $18 million of grants for our performance contracting clients nationwide. So we have a pretty good track record, and we think that we can use that to, again, help maybe buy down the original financing amount. That way you can have a much shorter term, or you can realize your savings faster, and just make it more financially viable. So next slide, we're going to go over an actual example. So the city of Sierra Vista, Arizona, I'll say they're about 40,000 people. This is about 10 miles from the Mexico border. I have been there. It is in the middle of nowhere. And they had a lot of infrastructure challenges that they were facing. And if you want to click through, we can, look at the highlights there. So they thought, okay, we need to do an energy performance contract. We've got air conditioning systems that are failing. We've got plumbing fixtures that need to be redone. Irrigation lines that are leaking. And when they looked at utility savings alone, it was about a $2 million project over a 20-year period. So $2 million in utility savings over the course of 20 years means we could do $2 million worth of work. Does that make sense? Okay. So, almost every energy service company in the state, there were probably 10 of them. All of us were competing for their business. And our team went in and said, okay, $2 million, whoop-de-doo. What if we could turn this into 2 or 3 times that? And they said, well, how on earth are you going to do that? And we took a look at their strategic initiatives and saw that they wanted to revamp their sports fields. They saw people from their community going to other communities on the weekends for their kids' soccer tournaments or, that sort of thing, spending their money on lunch and dinner and hotels. And they said, our sports fields are in total disarray. We have no money. This is our 20-year plan. If we could, wave a magic wand, we would revamp all our sports fields, get all of that revenue, the rental fees for the fields, and people coming into our community and spending money. We helped them turn that 20-year plan into 3. So we were able to do $40 million worth of self-funding work for them in the last 3 years because of that funding model I showed you on the last slide. They're getting about an additional $7 million in tax revenue since we started with them about 3 years ago. That's about $1.7 to $2 million extra in sales tax revenue that they're realizing every year because they invested in their facilities. So again, this is just one example, but hopefully this helps you kind of wrap your head around what the possibilities might be. We're going to continue with your blessing to put this business case together, and hopefully at a future council work session, we can present that, let you know where we think it stands. And if at any point we don't think it's viable, we'll let you know, and you haven't lost out on anything. So with that, we'll take some more questions. I'm sure you have some.
Yeah, counselors who hasn't spoken that has a question. Nancy?
Yeah, I went to a CML, this last CML conference, and I don't know if you were the ESCO for that or not, that presented.
I was not, but I know her very well.
Okay, because it was multi-jurisdictional, incredibly complex project, highly successful. The city was thrilled with it. And other than that, I don't remember the details. So that was a good news story, very good news story. Have you had, or I guess I should address this to you, have you had any unsuccessful ones? I'm, to me, this is kind of a no-brainer. It increases our capacity, our capacity for our staff, for grants, for construction, all the things that you identified tremendously at minimal cost to us. And it supports one of our very core values of environmental sustainability. So I think it's pretty easy. And for 12, if you were saying $12,000 for the initial assessment, I think it's well worth it because, the payoffs could be, the risk is absolutely minimal and the payoffs could be very, very, very large for us. So my basic question is, do you have any failures? Have you seen any failures? And what caused that failure if you did?
So in the program's 25-year history, we've had 2 projects that didn't meet the guarantee. So they didn't realize the savings that were identified and proposed to them. The one example I can give you of where it went wrong was a city was doing some water treatment improvements, excuse me, and they didn't account for the growth of the community. And so the, recommendations and project implementation, when that happened, it wasn't right sized for the growth of the community, and then it couldn't support that growth. And so they actually ended up having to do some additional work that was very costly. So I think in that situation,
would they have had to do that work anyway?
They would have had to do the work anyway, but just because the demand was then greater than they could provide, they weren't realizing the appropriate savings. Those savings were being eaten up by that increase in the demand for the water. So again, only 2 projects in 25 years where that savings has not been met. So
And that's for Colorado. My team has done $3 billion worth of these projects over the last 30 years, and our savings shortfall rate is 0.27%. And quite frankly, those handful of clients who have had those shortfalls, they've become our best references because we went back and we made it right. Whether we wrote them a check for it or we actually went in and investigated after the fact and said, okay, why did it fall short? Let's go fix it rather than just giving you the money back. Let's actually make it right. So it does happen once in a blue moon, but we take a very conservative approach to this so that we're under promising and over delivering, so to speak. Any other questions?
Other counselors? Denise?
Yeah, I just
I
want to,
think Councilwoman Wolf, do you have another question?
Denise had her hand up first, so we'll go to Denise and then we'll go to Wolf.
I just wanted to mention right now, I believe you're working with Woodland Park and Monument. Both of those, Monument is a little bit further along, but Woodland Park is about at the same place we are, correct?
Yes, so Monument has moved forward with another ESCO from the Energy Office's list. And but my team is working with the city of Woodland Park. They're about at the same stage as you. We're doing this initial business case to see if this is somewhat feasible. And Delynn and I were putting our heads together before we came in here tonight. There may be an opportunity, the rubric that the Energy Office uses for their investment grade audit fee, that maybe 25 cents per square foot-ish that we were describing. If we can combine this with Woodland Park and figure out a way to have you under a joint contract, there may be a way that we can actually get that down closer to the 20 cent mark, just to help reduce that fee a little bit more. You'd obviously, pay your own portion for whatever square footage is yours versus theirs, but there might be some ways that, it sounds like you have a really good relationship with them, and we would be perfectly willing to collaborate on that effort to just make it a little bit more financially viable for everybody.
Julie?
So how do you get paid? Do you just get the 12,000 example you gave us for the workup, or I don't understand how your firm makes money off of this?
We are not a nonprofit. We do get paid. So we act as the general contractor for the construction. So that's essentially, we're getting paid on the construction amount, the full project amount.
I see.
And we manage all the subcontractors for you. That's not a responsibility of the city. So all of that's handled. But yes, that is how we get paid.
And that's all part of the monthly payment when we pay you. That's all part of the savings, or is that part of the matching fund? Or no, we pay you with the funds that we get from our loan.
Correct.
Right? But other than the actual general contracting, how do you get paid?
That's how we get paid.
Oh, I thought there was something up front where you said it's usually just 12,000.
So that's the investment grade audit fee. Again, that's that fee. And there's a couple different ways that can play out. So when we enter into an investment grade audit, it's a joint audit fee that you pay to Schneider Electric, but the Energy Office, the Energy Office dictates how much that cost is, just to make sure it's, nobody's getting price gouged, right? So let me take this back. So we get that audit fee when you do one of two things. When you decide to move forward with a project. So if we go through that audit, we get a construction contract together, we found a viable project. Usually that investment grade audit fee gets rolled into the total cost of the project. So you don't end up actually paying it out of pocket. If we find a viable project during that audit and you decide not to move forward with it, then you would pay us that fee outright. If we go through the investment grade audit and we do not find a viable project, then you get to walk away. So that's why I do this business case before we get into that audit to make sure, it's a viable project for me as well as you. That way nobody loses out. So that's where that audit fee comes into play. There is an off ramp. If I can't find a viable project for you, you don't have to pay that. But yeah, if you choose to move forward with construction, then it just gets rolled into that amount. So welcome.
Okay, thank you. Judith?
Dylan, how many ESCOs are approved currently by the Colorado Energy Office? How many do you have?
We have 11 firms for this program year, and I'm happy to follow up with a list of those.
Great. That'd be wonderful. And you're all paid basically the same structure as you described is the same as with all of the ESCOs, all the 10 other ones that you have.
That's correct. So our office actually has contracts with each of those firms. And so within that contract, they've agreed to follow our program structure, follow statute, things like that.
Okay, so thank you. Appreciate that list.
So while there is an option to sole source or direct select from that list, this is me saying this as someone who would love to do business with you. I always advise for local government clients, go ahead and go through that solicitation process. I think ethics and optics often go hand in hand, and your constituents want to know that you vetted out a number of different companies and picked the best fit for you. There's a reason there's a lot of us on that list, and we're all good at different things. So it's up to you to decide who you think the best fit is. Obviously, I would hope that's us, but you do have many choices, and I would encourage you to explore those.
And the list is in your packet.
Thank you. Other counselors? I've got a couple questions. I guess for the first one here, Denise, and this is fairly elementary, but I better check it with you. I believe we as the city, we pay Colorado Springs for the electricity on the light poles, the night lights, is that? Yeah, and then we just kind of a lump sum, yeah. Well, and there've been a few times I've looked at that and thought if we had LEDs or more sensitive lights, again, and ladies, I will say that last week, the city council approved a land use development code very much with Hannah. She was central to it. And part of that, it took 20 years to do this. Part of it was we got closer to a dark skies kind of situation. We still got a couple of difficult things. In my mind, one of the biggest things is the light poles, that's Colorado Springs Utilities does that. We pay for it. Many times I've wondered, here we've got this light, which to many of us is sort of obnoxious. We could have more sensitive lighting. I guess part of my thinking would be as you pursue this, I'd like to see if there's a way that we could, over time, replace those big light poles with something that's more sensitive. And in the process, I think it's one of council's, something we've talked about sort of informally, is to bury the utilities. So that's, and obviously I don't think that you'd be able to solve that entirely, but maybe that's a mechanism that would help cover some of the costs. And it's probably a very long-term sort of solution, but this may be something where your expertise would play into finding a solution for us.
So my team actually does have experience upgrading streetlights that are utility owned. We can act on your behalf and act as your advocate to get them to upgrade those lights. Let's be honest, the utility has no incentive to update those. You pay for it. They don't. So we can give them a gentle nudge and work that out. And then you should have lowered utility costs as a result. We can help you spec those, dark sky specifications to make sure that you're meeting those goals. And then often what we find is even if the utility updates the light fixture to LED, you also pay a maintenance fee. Oftentimes they don't change the maintenance fee. We know just from putting LED bulbs in our homes that you only have to change LEDs maybe every 10 or 15 years, whereas incandescents are, every couple years. So your maintenance fees should be drastically lowered if your streetlights are upgraded to LED. So again, we can act on your behalf. Just depending on how the utility would want to handle it, that could be kind of a sidebar project, or if they're willing to work with us, it could be folded into the scope of an energy performance contract.
Okay, great. I find that encouraging. A couple things too. You'd mentioned Woodland Park, and you've been doing this, for roughly 25 years, I think. Do you have some other towns or cities about our size that have used you just kind of as a reference?
So I'll be honest, on the government side of things, we are newer. So I started with the team last year. I have a background in mechanical and HVAC services. However, we've had a lot of success with public school districts over the last 5 years since we entered this market. So we're actually doing business with Lewis Palmer and Monument. And we were just awarded to do a project like this for District 11 in Colorado Springs. And we're, working pretty closely with Woodland Park right now. So we're making a lot of headway. But Dylan can talk about maybe some other city references in this area. Obviously Monument has just entered into a contract. I don't think they've gotten started quite yet, but there's a lot of buzz around this and it works. I mean, the track record that the Energy Office has is pretty great. So if you want to maybe describe some other cities.
So, again, happy to provide like a full list of projects that have gone through our program. So I can send that to you guys, but nearby Telluride, we're doing a project with currently, City of Fountain. I'm trying to think of
Some of the smaller
population
ones.
size. Crested Butte is one of them. So there are quite a few that I think probably have parallels in terms of number of buildings, but I'll follow up with a full list as well as where I have it, some contact info. And I definitely encourage you to reach out and do your own kind of research to see kind of what their feel was on how the process worked, but quite a few clients.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Last call from council. Any follow-on thoughts or comments? Denise?
Mayor, I think one of the things that this opportunity may bring is to look at the library, the pool, this building, HVAC, windows, those type of things.
The chamber building.
The chamber building, yeah. So I think there's lots of buildings for us to look at and get a sense of if this is a way to help fund some of those projects.
It's on the list.
Okay. Denise, do you have any comments you'd like to make relative to this?
No, all we need from you is direction to go ahead and pursue and to have them go ahead with the business case, and then we'll continue from there and keep you updated.
Council, I'd like to see what your pleasure is.
Does that mean moving forward with an MOU? Is that what I hear you saying?
But can we just go around the table and see how we feel about this? So I guess my question to y'all is, do you want to go ahead with this and give direction to Denise and staff to go ahead and pursue this? So Michelle?
I'm in favor of proceeding going forward.
Great. Thank you. Judith?
I'm a yes.
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay. Let me yes. John says nod.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
I don't even see any downside. It sounds fabulous. I mean, the only downside is maybe the initial, whatever it is, payment that you make, but nominal. So it sounds great.
Yeah, it sounds like, going to heaven but not having to die.
I know. And that's the part where I can thinking I'm missing something because, when something is too good to be true, it usually isn't true. But this sounds like you can't lose. So.
Sounds
Great.
good. Then the direction from council is to pursue. Okay,
Thank you so much.
great. Thank you very much. Nice presentation. Yes. Well, this is about the time we normally take a break, but we're pretty much done with, it looks like, tonight's business. Council correspondence. I think I'll just go around the table here. Michelle?
I've had a resident mention that they've been getting a lot of brown water, and the water department is saying to run the water in the tub to clear it out, and then it runs up their water bill.
Okay. Maybe Denise, you could get the specifics on that. Okay, Judith?
I don't have anything, Mayor.
Nancy?
Manny Awards are coming up. So looking for nominations that you'll be hearing about, there'll be a call going out for nominations. But if you think of anyone who is, well, they don't have to be in Manitou Springs actually, but who contributes greatly to the sense of community here. Be thinking about that. And when the call comes out, we'll get you more information to submit your nomination.
Okay, thank you. Julie? Okay, nothing. Natalie?
Well, I just wanted to add that the date of the Manny Awards is March 23rd. just so that you can all write that immediately on your calendars.
Okay, March 23rd. Okay. Is that a Thursday?
Yes.
Okay, it's a Thursday. Okay. And it'll be here. Okay. John? Okay. And I don't have anything either. I will mention that I got an email from John Suthers shortly after the election in Colorado Springs, and he suggested that he and District Attorney Michael Allen be named Manitou's Economic Citizens of the Year. So it was when you said the Manny thing, and it reminded me of that. So I thought I don't really have anything else, but maybe you'll get a grin out of it. Yeah, because of the marijuana. So I thought, well, it's worth it. We should maybe a little something. So council, if council wants to consider a gag gift from Mayor Suthers, that'd be fine. Other than that, I don't have anything. Denise, council correspondent, or your work.
I just have a couple of quick things. Is just a reminder, February 2nd is the Ruxton Community Meeting here. So I just want to announce that. And if anybody's in the public, to please put that on your calendar. Crystal Hills Community Meeting for the police is January 19th at 6 p.m. at the High School Media Center. So
It's
that
also
will be.
Crystal Park folks as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it is January 19th at 6 p.m. at the High School Media Center. We have a preliminary dumpster day, and that's preliminary. Looks like it's going to move. So I'll put it out there, but just want to underline preliminary. That will be May 13th, and it will be only up at Public Works. And we're working, Alex is working to try to get the annual report completed so we can get that in the paper and go from there.
Will the February 3rd meeting be on YouTube? I won't be able to make it, and I wanted to know if I'd be able to pull it up and see it since I'll be out of town that night.
It's February 2nd, and I don't
2nd.
know. Let me check that and see. I will let you know. I don't know, so I'll let all of council know. I'll send an email.
Or maybe I should say instead of letting me know, I'd like to propose that be something that the public can access on YouTube, even if that means we have to pay somebody to come down that night and upload it for us. I think it sounds like an important meeting.
Julie, I think it depends on the format, and I don't know what that format will be. So I'll get you all the information, and then we'll see how we could make it work if at all possible.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? If not, we're adjourned. Thank you all.